Hey there, welcome to the One Brain Four Wheels channel. It's the Gear Bear here, like always, and today we're sitting behind the Fiero V6 GT, and in today's video I'm going to be demonstrating how to get access to and replace the alternator and water pump belt on this bad boy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first step, you're going to have to jack up the car. So go ahead, and once the car is jacked up, as you guys can see, I've got mine back here. Let me get back. Jacked up nice, got some jack stands up in there. Then you're going to be removing this rear passenger side wheel. Once you've removed that, we're going to have to get access to behind the wheel well liner. And to do that, there's an assortment of 7mm screws along the edge here, if you guys can see that. Quite a few of them. And then back in more, we've got these little screw heads, little Phillips screw heads, and you can see this one kind of falling out. They're actually little plastic retainers, so you just screw in to expand the retainer enough, and it holds the wheel well liner in place. So since I already have my car jacked up, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this wheel, remove the liner, and then we can actually see the alternator and the belt in place in the engine compartment from out here and get a little better access to the bolt that actually holds it, because the alternator on these cars is what you actually use to provide the tension on that belt. Alright, so once you have all those little tiny screws and retainers removed from the wheel well liner, it almost wants to fall out on its own. You might have to pry a little bit at the corners and stuff where it might be a little wedged in, but it's really easy to remove. And then when you actually pull it out of the wheel well, you'll notice there's one little wiring loom that's kind of stuck up in here. I don't know if you guys can see that well or not, but it just has a little plastic little retainer that kind of clicks in from the top down into the wheel well. So you'll just want to go ahead and release that guy before completely removing it, which I'm going to need two hands to do. But once I go ahead and do that, it looks like we will also need to be coming up underneath here and removing, you guys can see down there, there's a little splash guard that's still in place. And that, I think removing that will give us a little bit more space to reach up in there and up to the alternator. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that as well, which is also just held in with a couple of those little screw retainers. Yeah, so with the wheel well liner completely out, it's a little bit easier to see what I was talking about with that little splash guard that remains in place. It'd be really nice to be able to get up in here without any of this in the way. And so you guys can see it's all one piece, very flimsy, going across the back there. And it's just held in with more of these little screw type retainy clips, which were used on the inner part of the liner. So yeah, I'm going to remove all of those. Looks like this one's already kind of broken off. But just really quickly, get that off, and then we can get a clear shot, I think, up through there, and that's where we want to be. Alright, now that we have the little splash guard removed, let's go ahead and go in there a little deeper with a 13mm, either a socket wrench or just a regular wrench will work. And if we come in through this little hole that we've made for ourselves, take a little closer look. So I'll go ahead and use my wrench as a pointer, and when we look up underneath here, you guys will see, right there, that is the edge of the metal bracket that the alternator actually slides up and down along to go ahead and tighten or loosen the belt. So if I go ahead and put the wrench down, you're going to hear a click. There we go. If we go ahead and kind of put my hand up here, so you can see there's the bolt I've already loosened up here with the 13mm. If I move it back and forth, that would be tightening it. And we loosen it again. You can see the whole alternator moving back and forth back there. And when you pull it in like this, it is now loosened. And I can go ahead and free this belt down here. And what I've noticed is that when looking at this belt, which is the one I wanted to change anyways, if we come over here, back, and up under, you guys can maybe see or maybe not, there's the other belt down here which is set. So the belt that powers the water pump and the alternator sits up front here, and then behind that on this main shaft coming out, you have another thinner belt that goes over here, back that direction, and that is for the AC if your car is equipped. And that one, I'm noticing, actually does need some changing as well. So we're going to go ahead and loosen up the AC compressor as well, and go ahead and tackle that one while we're in here. So here's a little bit of a better view the next day of the alternator and its bracket. And you guys can see if you come in here, it moves nice and easy along this little sliding mechanism here. And definitely this one by far is way easier to maneuver than the compressor over there, which you guys will see here in a minute. But yeah, this one moves with ease, and it's very easy to access. You can see it's right here at the bottom once you remove that wheel well liner. Very nice to work with. So before we move on to the AC belt, I do want to talk about if for some reason your alternator belt is hard to take off because your alternator just doesn't want to rotate, even when you loosen that bolt down at the bottom of the vehicle, you might need to come from the engine bay up here. And if you guys kind of look down here where my flashlight is pointing, right down there, can you guys see the bolt? Let me see if I can kind of prop this up a little bit. Let's see if that's going to work or not. Can you guys see where my flashlight's hitting? Probably not. It's too glary. Let me try this like so. I'm going to come in here and right where my finger is touching, right there. That is the bolt, the upper bolt for the alternator. So if the alternator doesn't want to rotate on the bottom, go ahead and come and use a 13mm on this guy as well. Loosen that up, and then you should have no problem going ahead and loosening it. There you go, you can see it now. You should have no problem loosening the alternator at the bottom from this point on. And then just make sure to go ahead and tighten this thing back up once you guys are done changing your belt later on. And if you need a little bit more space when trying to get a wrench in there, these two little hose lines that connect into these guys right here, I just pulled those right on out and set them aside so I can get a wrench in there nice without worrying about breaking off this rubber or anything. So, you know, there's no fluid or anything in these. I think these are just vacuum lines. So you can just go ahead and move those out of your way if need be. Coming back around, let's go over here. Right, now this side, if you look back, so there's that main pulley there, and we come up over here underneath this coolant line where my flashlight is shining, that is the AC compressor. And if you look right below it, you might be able to see there is a 15mm bolt right there, and this mechanism works exactly the same as the alternator one. Go ahead and loosen that up, and then the whole AC compressor should be able to shift to the left. And when you come in here and actually shift that compressor to the left, that'll actually do is go ahead and loosen up that belt. So I kind of started to do it already, but if we put it back, so this would be later on, you'll go ahead and put it back to the right to tighten up that belt like so. And then when you're actually taking this thing off though, and you've got this bolt nice and loose, you'll move it to the left, and you can see that belt nice and loosened up. Now it still seems a little tight on here. I'm thinking just as with the alternator, there's probably another bolt higher up that I can go ahead and loosen, which will allow me to then rotate the AC compressor with a little bit more ease. Just how like before with the alternator, like I just said, up above it was a little bit too tight to even allow it to kind of rotate on that rotation point. So if we can come up a little higher, loosen up the upper bolt, and then this bottom one nice and loosened up should be able to swing without any issues. And to go ahead and get to that bottom bolt on the AC compressor, I would highly recommend using an extension on your socket like this. You can just wedge it up here real nice and be able to get back there without kind of hurting your knuckles and everything like that. Alright, so it's the next day. I went ahead and actually took out the battery and the battery holder out of the engine compartment, so that way I could go ahead and access those upper two bolts that hold in the AC compressor bracket. However, I realized that after doing that, it's still a pain in the ass to access those upper bolts. I really don't know how people are doing that. I looked on the forums online and people say it's possible, but my hands, they're not that big, but they don't fit. But what I actually realized is we're going to go underneath here in a minute. And I actually think that the compressor has enough leeway, and it's not like too tight to be able to rotate. What I think it is that the hoses that actually go to the compressor that have the Freon and stuff, those are not really long enough, or they don't have an extra amount of length in the hose to really allow an easy movement of that compressor to make it a little bit more distant from, you know, those hoses run up to the front of the car and stuff like that where the condenser is. And so when you're pulling that back to go ahead and loosen up the belt, you're kind of putting extra strain on those hoses. And I think that's where the issue's coming in from. So really with that thinking, I'm guessing you probably don't actually need to remove the battery and the battery holder unless for some reason your upper two bolts on the AC compressor bracket were actually too tight, which in my case I don't think was an issue. If that is the case for you, I wish you luck, because I have no idea, honestly, how you can get in there. Maybe if you had a small enough wrench, you could access it from the top, but people are saying they access it from the bottom. And even if you like move the exhaust system out of the way, there's still too many things that are going to bind your hands. I'm not really sure how you do that. All right, so let's go ahead and make our way underneath the car and kind of show you guys where the bolts are from this angle and how you can wedge things in like a screwdriver or something to kind of pry and give you just enough leeway to get that belt off. All right, under the old Fiero. So the camera right now is facing the passenger side, waved to my foot. And if we kind of just go under the car, about 1/3 of the way in, we'll kind of go up. And here's the catalytic converter back here, coming closer to the passenger side of the vehicle. You can see right now I've used a flathead screwdriver. It's pretty thick and old, and I'm actually prying. See those little holes there? You can use those same spots to pry the AC compressor forward towards the front of the car later when you want to tighten the belt. But right now I'm doing it in the opposite direction to apply a little bit of pressure, pushing that compressor towards the rear of the vehicle to allow for the belt to be able to slip off. And it's pretty tight, but it did work, and I got the belt off there. I don't know if you guys can tell, but that pulley it's got nothing on it, it's empty. Yeah, so that's pretty much how you do it from the bottom. But I do want to point out, so the light is on the compressor right now, that whole thing. The top bolts, I have no idea how you can access those from the bottom. I do know you can go ahead and remove that heat shield there. Potentially you could remove this one right here. But either way, there's still going to be things in your way. And I just don't really see the point of doing it from the bottom. I think you'd be better off coming from the top, if anything. Just because there's just too many things. There's wiring looms and all sorts of AC component bits up here where the light's shining. I'm just not really sure how you'd be successful in getting those bolts from the bottom, but you know, who knows. All right, so at this point we're gonna go ahead and purchase the new belts for the Fiero, and then installing them is pretty much just gonna be the opposite of everything we've done thus far to get to this point. I'll go ahead and cover anything that might pop up. It's a little bit difficult or different, but it should be pretty easy, kind of going in the reverse order of what we've done so far. All right, so it's the next week. I've got both of the belts off. Let's see, we've got number one. This is the belt that goes around the alternator, the crank, and the water pump. And let's see if we can get you guys, these are the numbers that are on the one that came off of the car. See all those, but I went ahead and replaced it with, you can pull it up, there we go. So these are all the belts that I bought. I went ahead and bought them off of Rock Auto just because it was simple and they had all the parts I needed. Not an endorsement. I haven't used them since, oh god, probably like the early 2010s. You can see it's actually about 3 belts here. The one I just showed you, the replacement for that was the one actually highlighted in blue. I don't know if you guys can see that. It is the Dayco part number 5050413. And then you'll see the other 2 belts up there, also Dayco's, 17380 and 17390. Those belts are not actually the size that's recommended for the Fiero AC belt. And if I go ahead and pull, this is the belt that I pulled off of there. Let's see what the part number is on here. It is right there. I'll let you guys go ahead and read that, which is not the same number. Why I decided to pick these 2 belts is because they were recommended on the Fiero forums, and they are a little bit wider of a belt, so they sit higher on the pulleys, and the idea here is that it's able to kind of, because it's wider, you're spreading the force that's applied to the belt over a wider surface area, so hopefully it's going to put a little bit less strain on the belt, and that's why I did it. And I picked the 17380 and the 17390 because honestly I wasn't really sure what size I would need lengthwise. The 80 is a little bit of a smaller length overall than the 90, and that one actually ended up being just fine. Now, had the 17380 been a little bit too tight, then the 17390 would have been a little bit longer, and I could have slipped it on with even greater ease. The problem with that one, in my application, because the 17380 was perfectly fine, the 17390 might be a little bit too big. So really, you might want to go ahead and measure your belts and kind of see what length might be better for you, or just buy both. You can always return them depending on where you buy them. So yeah, just for a review, I went with the 17380 Delco belt for my AC belt, and then I went with the 5050413 for my alternator water pump belt. And just to further clarify, I'm not using the stock dimensions as far as length of belt for the AC belt, because since the new belt is going to be sitting higher on those pulleys, the groove of the pulley, it's actually going to need to be a little bit longer than the stock dimension. And so that's why I'm kind of playing, guess here and there between the 80 and the 90, because I'm not really sure what the effect of making it wider, how much longer I would actually need the belt to be, and both sizes were recommended online. In regard to installing the belts themselves, nothing too eventful here. In regard to installing the AC belt, that one I just used a flathead screwdriver or a little pry bar thing. And using those little slots that I showed earlier in the video, I went ahead and just used like the screwdriver. I stuck it in there and was able to provide a little bit of pressure on the body of the AC compressor to provide that tension, kind of pulling the compressor back towards the front of the vehicle, and that tightened up the belt really easily, actually. Now, as far as tightening the alternator and water pump belt, that was a different issue. That one I had a really big problem being able to provide enough tension on the belt so it wouldn't squeak when I started the car. So what my solution was going online onto one of the Fiero forums. I think it was one of the Appendix forums, and you can kind of see here, I have a Crescent Wrench, and you can see I've got my socket wrench there, ready to go to tighten up the belt, or the bracket for the alternator. That's how it swings and provides tension. Now, using your Crescent Wrench, on the back of the alternator, kind of at the bottom where the bolt goes in, there's actually a nice little squared out section where you can go ahead and insert your Crescent Wrench and use it kind of as a prying mechanism to provide tension on the alternator as you tighten up the bolt. So you slide this on to the nubby of the alternator, and then you can use this whole thing as a handle to go ahead and pull back on the alternator, provide tension, holding that while you bolt it in. So other than that, really no problems doing this job, and I can go ahead and button everything back together, and then we're done. Well, there you have it, guys. That is how you change out the belts on a Pontiac Fiero with the 2.8 V6. Pretty easy, like I've been saying throughout the video. Definitely, you guys can do it. It'll take you maybe a couple hours the first time, and after that, it should be pretty simple. But yeah, I'll go ahead and put all the parts below that you guys will need for this. And I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more videos of me doing things with the Fiero, or the Corvette, or the Suburban, or the Jeep, or the Cadillac, the list goes on and on and on, then please subscribe to the channel One Brain, Four Wheels. And until next time, guys, I hope you have a fantastic day. Good luck with your project. Thank you so much for watching.